Good evening. Today we're learning Maseches Yevamos daf Lamed Daled. We're starting at the very top word, and we'll be wrapping up to the top of Lamed Hey Amud Aleph, and then tomorrow Mir Hashem will finish the perek. Let us jump right in. So the Mishnah on the previous page, on Lamed Gimel Lamed Beis, had spoken about this case of two men who married two women, and inadvertently the wives were huchlafu, they were inadvertently switched, and a whole stacking of Isurim took place. And I said a little tongue-in-cheek yesterday, look at all of this. We just spoke about Isser Chalal Isser, and Isser Mosif, and Isser Kolel, and Isser Bavaz Achas. That's what we spoke about on Shabbos. And here we have a Mishnah where we see that not only are they chayiv for Eishes Ish, but the Mishnah says that if they were brothers, they're also chayiv Mishum Eishes Ach. If the wives were sisters, then there's also Ishal Achosa. And if they were Nidos, then the din of Nida as well. So whose shita is this? Because we didn't see this in the previous Gemaras. In the previous Gemaras, we saw Machlokas, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shimon. Doesn't really seem to align with either of them. So says the Gemara, top words of Lamed Daled Amud Aleph. Uman Haitana de Isla Isser Kolol Visser Mosiv Isser Bas Achas. Who's the author of this Mishnah? The Mishnah on Lamed Gimel Lamed Beis toward the bottom. The Mishnah that indicates all of these stacked Yisurim. So says the Gemara, Amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, Rav Meir he. Ditnan should not be Ditanya. Ditnan, it's actually a Mishnah. Yesh Ochel Achila Achas V'chayiv Le Arba Chatos V'Hashem Echad. A person could eat one bite of food or one shiur of food, and in turn would be chayav 4 korbanos chatas and 1 korban asham. What's the mitzias? Tamei shachal chelev, a person who's tamei, who ate chelev, v'hu nosar, it was after its expiration date, mina mukdashin, biyom kippurim, he's compiled everything. Rav Meir doesn't mess around. Rav Meir omer, im haisa shabbos ve'otziu b'piv chayav, and he's like he's throwing everything in the kitchen sink. And it all sticks according to him. Everything, all of these certain sticks. So that's a good marimakom for our Mishnah, where everything sticks. Yes, they got married, and she's a nida. Those are unrelated sugyas, but we connect them just like Rav Meir does in this Mishnah. So then the Chachamim say back to Rav Meir, Amrilo Eino min Hashem. I don't agree with you. This is Eino min Hashem. This isser of carrying the food in your mouth is Eino min Hashem. It's not me'ain the other mitzvah. So the Chachamim didn't include it, but Rav Meir did. And then the Gemara, so that's the answer to our questions, that the author of our Mishnah potentially is Rav Meir. But then the Gemara asks another question, and as a way of background, we're going to go back to Maseches Shabbos, which is a luxurious place to go, because there in Maseches Rabbi Lazar de Mila, we learn the following shaila. Let's say that there are twin babies who are born, two boys. One is born right before Shkia, and one is born right after Tzeis. Okay, so that means you have a Shabbos bris, and you have a Sunday bris. And inadvertently, on Shabbos, you did the Sunday baby's bris on Shabbos, which is day 7, which is a 0 in halacha, a total 0, and therefore usher to do on Shabbos. This is called ta'ab dvar mitzvah. Now, what was going on in our Mishnah? Our Mishnah was people getting married. They were ta'ab dvar mitzvah, right? So over there in Maseches Shabbos, in Rabbi Lazar de Mila, we had a machlokes of whether or not someone who was ta'ab dvar mitzvah is pater or chayiv. So let's say my intentions are golden. I'm the moel. I bring in the Sunday baby. I mean, the parents bring me the Sunday baby. I don't know which baby is which. They can't tell the difference. So I did the bris of the Sunday baby on Shabbos. What's the din? Machlokes tanoim. Some say ta'ab dvar mitzvah is chayiv, and some say pater. But our Mishnah only makes sense if you say ta'ab dvar mitzvah is chayiv. So says the Gemara, 8 lines down. V'Rab Meir ali b'deman. As it relates to the machlokes and Rabbi Lazar de Mila, who does he hold like? I ali b'dereb Shimon. If Rabbi Yoshua, excuse me, if he holds like Rabbi Yoshua, what does Rabbi Yoshua hold? Ha'amar ta'ab dvar mitzvah pater. That doesn't work with our Mishnah, because our Mishnah was ta'ab dvar mitzvah and everyone was chayiv. So if our Mishnah is Rav Meir, it can't also be Rabbi Yeshua. Those two don't work. Ella, it must be Aliba de Rabbi Eliezer. It must be that Rav Meir holds that in the machlokes of ta'ab dvar mitzvah that you're chayiv, like Rabbi Eliezer did in Rabbi Lazar de Mila. And in fact, if a moel does the bris of the Sunday baby on Shabbos b'ta'us, you're chayiv a korban. That's the psak of Rabbi Eliezer. So that's answer number 1, that our Mishnah over here on Lamed Gimel Lamed Beis is like Rav Meir, matching up with this Mishnah about this one achila where you violate all of these various isurim, but only under the umbrella of Rabbi Eliezer, who holds that ta'ab dvar mitzvah is chayiv. Otherwise, our Mishnah makes no sense, because our Mishnah is ta'ab dvar mitzvah is chayiv. So it has to be him, and it cannot be Rabbi Yoshua. Ibai sema. Another possible explanation is that really Le'olam Alibad Rabbi Yeshua. Maybe we could even say that our Mishnah is like Reb Meir, but like Reb Meir within Rabbi Yeshua, who holds Tab B'dvar Mitzvah as Pater. How does that work? If you hold the Tab B'dvar Mitzvah as Pater and our Mishnah is Tab B'dvar Mitzvah, they got married. Okay, they look so similar. It was a mistake. It was an honest mistake. So then I should be Pater. That's what it seems to be. But then our Mishnah doesn't make sense. Says the Gemara, Ki ka'amar Rabbi Yeshua Tab B'dvar Mitzvah Pater. When do we say the case of Tab B'dvar Mitzvah as Pater? That's only Hani Mili Gabe Tinokos Dismano Bahu. That's where you're in a pressure cooker of time. Everything is so strained. Baby one, today's the day, the 8th day. We don't want it to get close to Shkia. You're rushing. You grab the wrong kid. So that's when we say Tab B'dvar Mitzvah Pater, is when things are bahul, when things are chaotic. That makes sense. Aval Hai, in our Mishnah, there is no pressure cooker of when to get married. So therefore, Kevan de'ein zmano bahul, lo, we would not say you're pater, we would say you're irresponsible, and therefore you're chayiv. You should have been more careful. Hello, what's your name, my wife? Pull the veil back. Who are you? But we didn't take that precautionary measure in this Mishnah. So therefore, we could even understand our Mishnah within the camp of Rav Meir, and like Rabbi Yeshua, who in general holds a Tab B'dvar Mitzvah as pater. But here, because there's no pressure cooker of time, you're just a Russia. At that point, you're just irresponsible, and you are chayav a korban. You're chayav a korban on that one, because Tab B'dvar Mitzvah would be chayav, even according to Rabbi Yeshua, in a case where ein zmano bahul. Asks the Gemara, a third of the way down, that's not true. Truma to ein zmano bahul the kapater. We have a case of truma where there is no pressure cooker of time, and yet we still see it's pater. Rabbi Yeshua is patering in that case. What's the case? Ditnan haya ochel b'truma. You have a kohen who's eating truma. V'noda, he finds out on the spot, shu ben gerusha o ben chaluta, chewing on truma. This is not a good conversation to have when you're chewing on truma, to find out that you're a halal and you're totally not allowed to have any truma. So it says the Gemara Machlokes. Rabbi Eliezer mechayev keren l'chomesh. Rabbi Eliezer says he has to pay back the basic cost of the food plus chomesh plus a fifth, and Rabbi Yoshua says pater. So here we see Tab B'dvar Mitzvah's pater even when zmano eino bahul, which is a stira to what we just said, because we said that the whole reason that our Mishnah works is because it's Tab B'dvar Mitzvah and zmano eino bahul. We said therefore Rabbi Yeshua would say you're chayiv in that case. That's not true, because we see here that he says you're pater. Answers the Gemara, that's not correct. Ha'itmar Allah. When does Rabbi Yeshua say this? Amar Rabbi Barabai hacha b'truma be'erev Pesach askinan dizmana bahu. All right, we're almost on Erev Pesach. We have a little love from upstairs that this is right here. We're on the eve of Pesach, and the Gemara says things are bahul. Our homes are currently in the state of behala. It is the Sunday before Pesach. So you're bringing up these kalim, you're moving down those kalim, you're checking for crumbs, you're starting your clean. When are you going to turn over the kitchen? How are you going to kash? Are you doing the steam thing? Are you going to do the boiling kettle? Fine. So things are both. So all of this is answer number one to the question we started with, which is who's the author of our Mishnah? We said Rav Meir, and Rav Meir, according to answer number one, was within the camp of Rabbi Eliezer. The Tab B'dvar Mitzvah is chayiv, and maybe even according to Rabbi Yoshua, who would agree that our case is also a case of chayiv. Fine. But answer number two is as to who the author of our Mishnah is as follows. A little bit more than halfway down. Really, our Mishnah is be'isr bas achas ve'aliba de Reb Shimon. Our Mishnah is talking about all of the isurim happening bevas achas, not like we said, this mix of isser kolel and isser, not like it said at the top. No, all these averas happen in one moment. They're happening be'isr achas and ve'aliba de Reb Shimon, and according to Reb Shimon, who holds, like we saw on Shabbos, that there's only going to be one chiyuv in that case. Our whole Mishnah is bevas achas, and it's aliba de Reb Shimon. Fine. Says the Gemara, not so simple. Bishlam, I could understand part of the Mishnah, kulhu mishkach hasla, the general structure of the Mishnah, that these two people could marry at the same time. That's feasible. I understand how that can happen. Tishavinhu shliach, the men send shliach, they send the same shliach. Vishavu inhu and vishavu inhu shliach, upaga shliach b'shliach. The women send shliachim, the men send shliachim. The shliachim meet, and then the couples are in their own respective homes. They're intimate. Gotcha. Ella. Our Mishnah had said that if they were, our Mishnah on Lamed Gimel Lamed Beis said that if they were a nida, that Isser also gets thrown in. Ela nidos heche mishkach hasla. You're going to align the menstrual cycles of two women like it right at the moment of Kiddushin. It's so unreasonable. Like that, the Gemara does have some stretch answers. The Gemara doesn't even entertain this as an answer. Amar of Amram, Rav Amram gives a very strong ukimta. Amar of Amram of a Rav. How does this work? Bishofos, they are flowing, meaning they're currently in the midst of seeing dam. Mitoch yud gimel la'achar shlosha asar le'achar yuvein. Who, as it relates to the men, the women began bleeding from before they were bar chiyuva until they were bar chiyuva. So let's say from year 12 and 353 days or 354 days to year 13 and 1 day. That's on the men's side. And mitoch shnei masar la'achar shnei masar lechiyuv inhi. So Rashi points out what's happening here. Rashi says that the girl was about to turn 12 and the boy was about to turn 13 when this transaction was to take place. At that moment, the women were shofos. They were bleeding. They had a menstrual cycle. Now, when they're ketanos, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. They're ketana. I mean, it matters midrabanan, maybe, but it doesn't matter midoraisa. In the same moment that they were kedushin, they were still both nidos. And that's the case that Rashi highlights this whole long ukimta. If you want to see a beautiful Rashi, Rashi is 15 lines or so, 20 lines from the bottom. Dibra maskala achar yud beis. Take a look later. But that's the Gemara's answer, is that no, it's still possible that we could have the case of Bas Achas. So again, summarizing, who's the author of our Mishnah? It's either Rav Meir, who says Isser Kolel, Isser Mosef, and Isser Bas Achas, or no, it's Rav Shimon, and the whole Mishnah is Bas Achas.
Why does it have to be the exact amount? I don't understand why it has to be the exact amount. Why can't it be a week?
Because the way that we're providing the second answer is that all of the Isurim happened at the same time, according to Rav Shimon. The first answer doesn't have to be that way. They can be sequential, because in the first approach, Rav Meir can handle different types of sequential mitzvahs, and he still includes them all together. But the second answer is saying everything happened mamish at the same time.
Why can't it be a week after?
It could be, but then it wouldn't work for this answer. That would be the first answer of Rav Meir. That's not bevas achas. They have to be boel and nida right after kiddushin, right after they get married. Everything has to happen. That one act of tashmish amita is all of the isurim. So the Gemara was bothered, like, you're going to tell me that these two women happened to have gotten married right when they were gedolim. They both were pores nida right away, and they both slept with their husbands. That's a crazy cockamamie case. It's almost as crazy as the Ukimta, right? The Ukimta, they both happen to be flowing. There's not much of a difference between the two, but that's the Gemara. Rashi gives more color, but that's really what
the shliach had to get the kedushin.
That's what Rashi said. That's what the Gemara says. The Gemara says that they both had shlichim, they both had kedushin, and the kedushin Rashi points out was chal right on the day of their birthday. So they became married on, let's say, the first day of that new year. When he was 13 in a day, she was 12 in a day, and then they had Tashmish Hamita, and all the Isurim kicked in at the same exact time. The Kiddushin is not the Isur. The Tashmish Hamita is the Isur. But all of the Isurim happened at the same time. The Kiddushin was done right. In sequence, it has to be that way, because otherwise they would have slept with the right person. I mean, it would have been off in regards to who should marry.
Happen after the kedushin?
Yes.
So all the blood had to start flowing from kedushin?
They were bleeding from the day before when they were ketanos, and then they became gedolos. And the boy was a katan and became a gadol. That's how Rashi paints this whole picture. Take a look at Rashi, because Rashi does explain everything. Now, we had said in our Mishnah that there was this idea of mafrishin osan, that you had to separate after recognizing who was married to, we had to separate them. So the Gemara says here, there is an assumption that a woman who still has her besulim, who still has maintained her virginity, that she will not conceive the first time that they are intimate. I don't think medically that's sound. I don't know how that works out. Maybe nishtana hatzvayim. You always have to answer that question, medically speaking, but there are stories. It does happen. I presume it does happen. In fact, the Gemara says that there were some Amoraim who were biki and behataya, that they knew how to have tashmish hamita even without breaking the basulim. They could still conceive. But anyways, the Gemara's assumption is that ein isha misaberes b'bia rishona. So says the Gemara. So why do you have to separate? Why do women have to separate? If they're both basulos when they get married and they had tashmish hamita once, why do they have to wait 3 months? So Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rabba Baravuha Shabualu v'shanu. Very simple logistics answer. They had tashmish hamita twice that night. So the first time it wasn't reasonable that they would conceive, because Eini should be Saberes would be a Rishona, but they had Tashmish twice. Says the Gemara, well, if they had Tashmish twice, that also means they slept with Anita twice. It also means they slept with their brother's wife twice, and it also means they slept with their sister's wife, their wife's sister twice, which means, says the Gemara, that the math doesn't work. If you're going to say you did the same Isser twice, double the numbers, but that's not what the Amoraim say. The Amoraim say that there were 16 Isserim total, 8 per couple. And now you're saying they were Bolu V'Shanu, that they had Tashmish Hamita twice, doesn't work. Says the Gemara, careful, because I could take your logic quite far. According to what you're saying, the Rabbi Eliezer demechayev al kol koach v'koach tuva havyon. Rabbi Eliezer says, this is a big sugya we're going to learn later in the Masechta. Rabbi Eliezer says, The episode of Tashmish is not only what's Asr, every movement of Hana is going to be an Isser Daraisa. And if that's true, says the Gemara, Al Kol Koach V'Koach Tuva Havyan, that means every time there's Hana and Tashmish Amita, that means you're multiplying all of the Chatos by 16. We don't say that. And how did we explain Rabbi Eliezer over there? Ella, to be Koach Rishon Kachashi, we only focus on the Koach Rishon, which is the first moment of Hana of Tashmish Amita. Hachanami to be a Rishona Kachashiv. Here too, we only look at the first Bia and not the second. It's a very tough answer because they actually did have Tashmish Amita twice. It's very difficult, but still. The Rishonim here deal with the following issue, which is we deal with this, like it's great. The Rishonim look over here, they're like, was this all Behela Machas, as we've spoken about in other Masechtas? Some of the Rishonim point out that if in between each moment of Hana, in one Tashmish Amita, you have Das, Aser, each one is Aser, Achatos. Well, at that point, it's not Achatos anymore, because that's B'mezid. But if there's a das that you know what's happening, then it's not Behel Mechad anymore. So some of the Rishonim explain like you, that what you're saying is that it has to be Behel Mechad, that there's one lapse in judgment. And by the way, that makes sense. It's mistaber that you should, if you didn't know that when you were with her the first time, so then the second time you thought it was mutter. So it's a reasonable answer, but the jump from Koach Rishon Kachashiv to Bia Rishona Kachashiv is a big jump in Lamdus. Okay, that's what the Gemara says. Amar le Rava le Rav Nachman. Hold on one second. I'll bring you a raya that you can conceive with the first Tashmish Amita. Val Tamar Babia Rishona Ibra. Who did she get pregnant from? Yehuda. Automatic question.
She already had
two husbands. She had two husbands. Erva Onan. So the Gemara is going to ask your question, Michael. Amar le. The Gemara responds, no. Tamar never had Tashmish Amita. Tamar be'etzba moacha. She actually removed her own besulim. And that made it so that when she actually had Tashmish Amita, she could conceive the first time. She was fully aware. She knew that as a besula, she was not likely to conceive, but she wanted to conceive. That was the whole ruse with the zona, right? Then with the chosim and the whole story of Yehuda and Tamar. So the Gemara says that she removed her own besulim to enable herself to get pregnant. Damar Rabbi Yitzchak, Kol moachos shall base Rebbe Tamar Shmon. All of the women in Beis Rebbe, in the house of Rebbe, who had removed their own besulim, they got the name Tamar. V'lama nikra Shema Tamar, al shem Tamar, Shema acha be'etzba. So we know, no, if we're saying, Tamar only had Tashmish Amita for the first time with Yehuda, and she conceived, v'haraya, we see that Isha is me'aberes b'bia rishona, and the Gemara responds, no, Tamar removed her own besulim. Says the Gemara, come on, Michael's question, v'ha'erva onan, v'ha'havu erva onan. The whole reason why she did this ruse with Yehuda was because Erva Onan died. And they wouldn't give the third son. So she's like, this is not right. I'm taking matters in my own hands. Says the Gemara, no. Erva Onan, Shimshu Shalo Kedarka. They didn't have regular Tashmish Amita. They had Tashmish Amita Shalo Kedarka. Says the Gemara, not so simple. Meisvei, the Brisa writes, Kol Esrim Ve'arba Chodesh, Dosh Mi Bifni Mizar Mi Bachut Ziva Rabbi Eliezer. This is a shita that does not make it into Shulchan Aruch, and we need Rashi to understand it, and it's still difficult to understand. The Gemara says that for the first 24 months after a baby is born while a mother is nursing, they should not complete Tashmish Amita Mi Bifnim. Dosh Mi Bifnim Mizar Mi Bachut. They should have Tashmish Amita, but Bizman Hazra, he should remove himself from her body. Why is this true? So Rashi deals with this. Rashi on the fourth line of the page. Why? What we're concerned about is the child, the mother's milk. If she does in fact conceive, then her milk will dry up and the baby will die. But why does that work? Why would that work? Dashmi bifnim, that should be an Isser D'Oraisa. So some Meforshim point out that that's only an Isser D'Rabbanan, which is very schwer. I don't know how that works. But again, that's what this shita anyways is not accepted. What does the Brisa say back to Rabbi Eliezer? Omar lei, that behavior that you just said, Rabbi Eliezer, halalu, einu ela k'maisa erva onan. That's no different than maisa erva onan. So two things. First of all, how does this shita deal with the fact that the baby might die? Okay, the Gemara doesn't deal with that. And number two, what's implied about erva onan? That they had tashmish amita and they were dashmi b'fnim and zarmi b'chutz. The haraya, they didn't have maisa only shalo kedarka. They also had regular tashmish amita also. Kasha.
But how do we know one way or the other? Where's the proof from one way or the other?
We don't have, it's an implication from the Brisa, because the Brisa says we don't want her to conceive, therefore dashmi bifnim zarmi b'chutz. And then the Tana says back to him, that's erva onan. We don't want her to get pregnant. Therefore it must be, but it has to be regular bia. Has to be regular tashma shemitah. That's the Gemara's assumption in the Brisa. So the Gemara says that when in the Brisa responds halalu einu ela k'maaseh erva onan, it's k'maaseh erva onan and velo k'maaseh erva onan. There are elements that are similar to erva onan, but it's not identical. K'maaseh erva onan, it was similar to erva onan in that they were dashmi b'fnim and zarmi b'chutz t'chsiv haya im ba'al eshes achi b'shiches arza. They taka were shiches arza. They wasted the zera. And velo k'maaseh erva onan di'ilu hasam shelo kedarka b'hacha kedarka is that over by the woman who we didn't want to become pregnant. There obviously we're talking about regular tashma shemitah to avoid pregnancy, but by erva onan they were dashmi b'fnim and zarmi b'chutz, even though it was shelo kedarka. My high. But that's what the Gemara says. That's what the Gemara says.
Wasn't it also because they didn't want to?
That's the next page. That's the next section right here. But they're beautiful women.
Right.
Yeah. So let's continue right here. Says the Gemara, Bishlama onan. We understand by onan, third of the way down. We understand by onan dichsiv be b'shiches arza ela er minala. The pasuk's not clear about er. We only know about onan. We always say er ve'onan. Really, onan was the one who was b'shiches arza. Says the Gemara, Amar Rav Nachman Ritzach dichsiv v'yamos gamoso, that he died also, and we make an assumption afu be'osa misames. He died for the same reasons. Says the Gemara, Bishlama onan mishum lo yihi azar. He didn't want his brother. He didn't want to have a name after his brother. Which, by the way, this doesn't fit with the previous Gemara because the previous Gemara says he was dashmi b'fnim zarmi b'chutz and b'yeshalo kedarka. You can't get pregnant that way. That's not how the body works. So the Gemara is a little shver here. That's not so simple. Ella my taima of hachi. Why did do this? Says the Gemara, so this doesn't fit very well with our Gemara because our Gemara assumes that Onan left Tamar as a basula. Even though they were with her, but they were only with her shelo kedarka. So why were they dashmi b'fnim zarmi b'chutz? Don't know. And how did that prevent her from becoming beautiful? Don't know, because she couldn't have conceived that way. So the beginning of this Gemara, the top of Lamed Dalet, assumes with clarity it's definitely the case. I mean, Beis Rebbe named people Tamar after this. I don't know if that's a good thing to tell people, but that's like, oh, what a wonderful name. What's your daughter's name? Tamar. It's not the nicest name. But that's what the Gemara says, is that Beis Rebbe named all of the girls Tamar who did this. So what does that show you? That Tamar was Taka Basula, which means that Erva Onan were only with her Shelo Kedarka. But then why were they Dashmi B'fnim Azarmi B'chutz? It doesn't explain that. You need Rishonim here. It doesn't.
What does the pasuk say about it?
Shiches Arza. It doesn't say how they had Tashma Shemitah.
Doesn't it say
No, that's the Gemara. There's the Gemara here that says Kadesh Shalotis Aber V'Yachis Shofia. That's over here. Yeah. Okay. Tana Rabbanim. The rabbis teach us on this topic about Shichvas Zera. The pasuk says Osa. Let's just read the whole pasuk. The pasuk reads in Sefer Vayikra V'Yishal Asher Yishkav Ish Osa Shichvas Zara. If a woman has been slept with by a man and there is Shichvas Zera, V'Rachatzu V'Mayim, they wash themselves with water. V'Tameu Ad Ha'arav, they are impure until night. So it says the Gemara halfway down in Lamed. What? Oh yeah, this past week's parsha. I didn't even notice that. Thank you. It's embarrassing. Thank you. Tana Rabbanan, Osa. What does it mean, Osa? When it says Yishkav Ish Osa, Osa Prat Lekala. Yeah, most women become Tmeya because of Shechvas Zera, but not a Kala. So the Gemara says, a drasha Divi Rabbi Yehuda. The Chachamim Omrim, no. What is the exclusion to the Tuma? Prat L'Shelo Kedarka. Is that if Tashma Shemitah is had Shelo Kedarka, so then there's no Tuma of Shechvas Zera. Omar Le Hon Berei de Rav Nachman. He named his son Hon, and he says to Rav Nachman, the Rav Nachman, Leima Kasava Rabbi Yehuda, the Shita Rabbi Yehuda, who learns the word Osa to teach us that a Kala who has Tashma Shemitah, that she is still not Tmeya. Is that because a Torah Chasa al Tachshite Kala? She spent so much money on the makeup, and we don't want her to become Tmeya because then she has to go to the mikvah and has to take off all the makeup because of chatzitza. Says the Gemara, no, that's not what's happening. Rabbi Nachman says back to his son, Amar Le, Lefi she'ein isha misaberes mibi rishona. No, it's a technical issue. The only time that there's tuma is when there's a potential for kedusha, and because she cannot conceive because it's bia rishona, therefore there's no tuma. That's a big halachic nafkamina. Okay. Says the Gemara, what really are Rabbi Yehuda and the Chachamim arguing about in their drasha about a kala? So it's really about how to learn the pasuk. Rabbanan Savre, that the words in the pasuk of Shechva Zera, Prat L'Ha'ara, that excludes when Tashma Shemitah is only Ha'ara, just a partial intercourse. Osa, what does that teach me? Prat L'Shelo Kedarka. So the Rabbanan don't have a way to learn out this din of the Kala. Masha'en came Rabbi Yehuda Savar Shelo Kedarka V'Hara Mishechva Zera Nafka. We learn out the psukim a little differently. That Shelo Kedarka, Tashma Shelo Kedarka and Ha'ara, just partial intercourse, that's turned out from Shechva Zera, and Osa is Prat L'Kala. So they just have different drashas. They place the exclusions in different places, and therefore Rabbi Yehuda is able to learn an exclusion of a kala, whereas the Chachamim do not. Two more sugyas. We're 2/3 of the way down Lamed base. Ki asa Ravin, Omar Reb Yochanan. Kol sheshasa achar baila eser shana menises shuv ena yoled. It's a halachic assumption from Chazal that if a woman was married and now she is not married for 10 years, she can no longer have kids when she remarries. So what?
Naomi.
Oh, the Gemara does not say that. The Gemara does not say that, but I hear you. Did anybody say that? I didn't see that anywhere. So that's what the Gemara says. It's a halachic assumption that if somebody, it's talking about a woman, is that if a woman is divorced or her husband dies, and 10 years go by, and only then she gets married in the 11th year, no, she won't be able to have kids. Amar Rav Nachman, lo shanu ela she'ein daita lihinaseh. That's only true if she not only took a 10-year break in dating, but she literally out of sight, out of mind. She'ein daita lihinaseh. She has no desire to get married. Aval daita lihinaseh. If she really did want to get married, misaberes, then she will conceive. Says the Gemara, Amar le Rava lebas Rav Chizda, which is his wife. Rava married Rav Chizda's daughter, and she had been married to another man who took a 10-year break. And then she married Rava. Says the Gemara, the rabbis are chattering about you in the base medrash. You took a 10-year break and you had kids. I knew I was going to marry you the whole time. That's a classic story. So that was the story of Rava and Rav Chizda's daughter, is that she did take a 10-year break and they had kids. So she said, oh, you were the talk of the base medrash. She said, I'm not the talk of the base medrash really, because I knew I was going to marry you, or I was at least interested in marrying. Next. Hahi de Asya lakamid Rav Yosef. There was a woman who came to question Rav Yosef on this idea. Amr lo, Rebbe, Ana shahisi, Ana shahisi achar baili eser shana v'yoladi. Chazal are wrong. They're wrong because she said, I did that. I waited 10 years and then I had a kid. Amar le, Biti, my daughter, al totzi ila zal direi chachamim. There's no way that the chachamim are wrong and you're right. And then she admitted what happened. Amar la, you're absolutely right. L'nachri nivalti. I did sleep with someone during that time, and therefore, because my brain was still involved in some way in marriage of some kind, albeit be'isr, it wasn't even marriage, it was just tashmish amita, but it doesn't matter because that breaks the chazal. The chazal say that the only time that this is true is when you are not thinking about marriage during that time and you've had no tashmish amita, and she was called out by her own challenge. That after this couple accidentally switch their spouses, so they have to wait 3 months to make sure that no one's pregnant. Chutz, there is an exception. Migiyores, from a woman who's a giyores, umishuchreres ketana, and a woman who was freed who was a ketana. Aval, and this is a crazy line, ketana bas Yisrael tzricha lahamtin gimel chodashim. A ketana, who's a bas Yisrael, she's a firm girl, okay, she's married, and she was the daughter, she was one of the women who had tashmish amita inadvertently with the wrong person. You have to wait 3 months. She can't even conceive. Says the Gemara, ubemai, what was the case? Ibn miyun. If you want to say it was a case of miyun, then that doesn't make sense. V'amar Shmuel de lo baya. Shmuel says explicitly that in a case of miyun, that there's no need to wait 3 months. Get, if you're talking about divorce when they got divorced from the Ketana, says the Gemara, ha'amar Shmuel chadazim. He taught this in shiur. Ha'amar Shmuel miyanabo ena tzricha lahamtin shlosha chodashim. Nasan laget tzricha lahamtin shlosha chodashim. One way or the other, she doesn't have to wait. So what is the case of the Ketana who has to wait 3 months? She can't even conceive. It doesn't even make sense. So obviously, our brain should be primed that there's a gzeira coming, because it doesn't make sense that we would ever be worried about her. If she's katana, we assume she can't conceive. Says the Gemara, last 2 words on lamadal, biznos. We're talking about a case of znos. The gazru chachamim katana mishum gedola. Wow, that is a bit of a stretch. That because we're concerned that this katana had znos, a young girl, she was married and she had znos, and then we say she has to wait 3 months before she's allowed to go back to her husband. She is allowed because she's a ketana, and we assume that pitui ketana is an ones, and ones is okay by the ones child is allowed to go back to the husband. That's fine, but we do extend the gzeira that because we would allow her to go back, we therefore would be concerned about a gedola, and therefore we don't allow the gedola to remarry a different person until 3 months have passed. Asks the Gemara, migazrin and ketana mishum gedola. Is there such a gzeira in this case? Vatnan. We have a brisa that says exactly not like what we just learned. We just learned on the bottom of Lamed Daled Lamed Beis that if there's a katana bas Yisrael tzricha lahamtin gimel chodashim. We just learned in this brisa on the 4th line of this page, on the 2nd line of this page, no waiting. So which one is it? This was a horasha. The fact that we didn't put the gzeira into place here was a bit of a horasha. Says the Gemara, Michlal dehavoy. if you're saying the words that it's horasha, it means that this Mishnah is not theoretical, that it actually took place. Take a look at Rashi. Second line, Rashi says, Bitmia. You're saying this actually happened? When there's a real story, the Gemara should say it's a Maisa. Even in Psak, this plays out. When you have a Mari Makom that says Maisa Shahaya, that's more powerful in Psak than a theoretical construct of a Mishnah. So it's important to distinguish. You're saying it's Horasha. This really happened. Did it happen or did it not? Says the Gemara, no, it didn't really happen. It's just in this particular case that in this case where in this time of Chazal, they said that it's like a Horasha, that we're not going to employ the Gzera. What was the logic of not employing the Gzera? That Chiluv, the likelihood of switching spouses, as was the case of our Mishnah, is Lo Shchiach. We'll stop right here. Mir Hashem, tomorrow night we'll pick up at 8:40 with a new daf. Wishing you all a beautiful night. Yeah.